Hello everyone, you might be noticing some different things here. I'm going to go over it in a second, but these are the finals of the StarCraft Evolution League number 2 tournament with the SC Evo mod on it. And I'll talk about what exactly that is for the people out there who haven't heard about this. I don't want to call it fad, it seems actually pretty cool, but this this new mod. In the bottom left of Paradox, it is going to be Shin playing StarCraft 2 Zerg. StarCraft 1 Zerg. I was like, wait, this looks like the StarCraft 1 skin, but StarCraft 2 also has a StarCraft 1 skin. Okay, anyways. And in the top right, we got Threepoint, who is playing StarCraft 2 Zerg. Easier way to tell that actually was the production, honestly. But anyway, behold the confusion that will now lie ahead, guys, because this is EVZ. Couple of quick things. Wait, what? Oh, because that's the base. Oh, okay. Never mind. Couple of quick things. We got a mod that gives you the ability to play as both Brood War and StarCraft 2. Now, obviously, StarCraft 2 doesn't change very much, but Brood War can't be totally, completely, 100% ported to StarCraft 2 engine and all its, glorious bugginess and whatever. It does have the ability to be, unlimited hotkeys and unlimited multiple building selection and blah, 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 blah. And the workers had, their speed or acceleration change to kind of compensate and so on and so forth. But you can play as both. And this tournament actually dictates a rule that you have to actually swap, basically. You have the choice of 2 races, right? You either play whatever in StarCraft 1 or whatever in StarCraft 2. You sign up with that. But then the higher seed gets to choose last as far as, I think, choose first. Choose first as to what they do. If they choose StarCraft 2 Zerg, then the other guy has to choose Brood War or whatever. And then it swaps continuously. So it makes sure that people don't come in as a superior StarCraft 2 player and then just constantly play that and, I guess, demolish everyone, which is not as fun as them being forced to also maybe try out Brood War Zerg, which is exactly Shin's scenario, by the way. But when it comes to Korean players, it's very unlikely that they don't have some experience in Brood War. You see some of the Brood War players actually have almost no experience with StarCraft 2 units. It looks really funny. You see some of the hardcore StarCraft 2 players who are probably not Korean try Brood War and get really confused. But when it comes to a guy like Shin, a Korean player who grew up probably idolizing Brood War players, he probably played a decent amount of Brood War, even though we know him for StarCraft 2. So he kind of gets, he almost gets a cheat in this game, okay? Because he's just good at both of them. But it's ZVZ, Brood War versus StarCraft 2, and this has really been interesting to watch, because initially you hear this and you're like, oh my god, Brood War doesn't have banelings. And you would be right, they do not. But it seems like people have been able, but this is an island map, which I'll get to in a second. It seems like people have managed to learn what to do against StarCraft 2 Zerg as Brood War Zerg that doesn't require banelings. So that's pretty cool, and we'll see that later on down the road. But not on this map, because obviously both players are going for something very different. One player, the StarCraft 2 player, going for Nidus Roach, and the other player, the Brood War player, going for 2-base or 3-base Spire, which is actually just kind of what you would do as a Brood War Zerg player anyway. But they're doing it specifically because it is an island map. These do not have any entrances or exits. You have to actually traverse air, like a Nidus Worm or whatever you do. And it looks like Shin knows that in a battle of spires, the StarCraft 2 player doesn't necessarily want to do that. So much more likely is that the StarCraft 2 player would try a Nidus Worm, and he was dead right about that. So this is already not working so well for the StarCraft 2 player. 3 points. Gonna try and just continue on, man. Not much else to do here. You're gonna try and play a macro game, but a guy's Spire's finishing. You're gonna lose all your Overlords. You're gonna lose all types of control. You're not gonna be able to expand with 3rd or 4th base. I guess it's like a half-third over on the island. It just looks very, very grim. Shin's so confident in his defense. Okay. So confident in his defense that he even is getting to the Ventral Sacks already, which is not necessary for his aggression, as far as the mutas, but it is necessary to expand or try to be aggressive with the Lings as well. It might look funny having these Overlords just hanging around like, oh, the Queen's gonna kill it. Brood War doesn't have Queens. So Had to wait for the mutas. Finally, the Nidus Worm does pop out and actually unleashes the Queen, so able to get transfuse. Roaches too, but not that many of them. And without a consistently flowing roach number out of a Nidus Worm, you're just not going to finish the game. I thought I saw Scourge for a second. Now, more mutas on the way. Actually, a couple of Sunkens. It looks like Shin realizes a couple more roaches got out than he really wanted to, but it's still so little damage overall. Shin could actually have still won this game, even if he had gotten down to something like 15 drones, I bet. The mutas would just dominate so much of that mid game. And Shin will win game number 1 with Brood War Zerg. But arguably, this is not where Brood War Zerg is the most tested. And that is good news for Shin, who very much probably chose to play Brood War Zerg on this map in particular, meaning that the next map they play on, guaranteed not island, this is the only island map, guarantees him StarCraft 2 Zerg on a map where he could actually go for a Ling Bane Flood, if that's what he wanted to do. We'll find out in a second. We're on an oldie but goodie map. The bottom right of Golden Wall, it is Shin. And in the bottom left, we have Threepoint. 3-Point now, the Brood War player, Shin in his element playing StarCraft 2 Zerg on a map that he almost certainly was playing as a professional player on, but I actually do not remember when Ragnarok, as he was once known, started to really perform well as a pro gamer. I feel like he's been in the gaming sphere, like the StarCraft 2 competitive sphere, from the dawn of time, but that's just because time is a concept and it's hard to track. I actually don't remember when he started to really make an appearance, but I can almost guarantee that he's played Golden Wall. And 3-Point probably did as well as a StarCraft 2 player, but a more casual StarCraft 2 player. So not as tested in the highly competitive sense. Plus, he's playing the Brood War Zerg, which is a whole different ball game. So feels very favored to Shin. Very, very, very extremely 100% favored. But good luck to 3-Point. He's going to try and do what he can with Brood War Zerg. Again, no Banelings. They get Lings. They get Hydras on Hatch Tech, but that's a dangerous maneuver. And they don't get Injects, so that's why you see a third hatch already coming down. What they do have are very powerful mutas and the ability to wall. I mean, that's really the two things I could think of that are good. Because that's what we saw other Brood War Zerg players do to win out against StarCraft 2 players. This doesn't have a pool yet. Seems that was on purpose. Okay. A rather greedy opener. Even though multiple hatcheries are necessary as Brood War Zergs, again, you don't have injects. I feel like that pool felt late. It's almost an entire pool behind Shin, but I don't know what I would actually... That's not a good comparison point because it's just a weird game. Anyways, Lings will not be available. But fortunately for 3-Points, Shin did not go for any type of early game aggression. I don't know what the plan would have been if Shin had. The hatchery doesn't actually fully wall. This one doesn't either. And they would just nibble on the hatcheries like indefinitely. Wait for the pool to finish. But it wasn't an early attack, so it's all good. Shin does now have the ability to make Lings. This is totally normal gas hatch pool timing is now in effect. He's got his injects going, but at this point now, 3-Point does have a fairly good wall. He did cancel an evolution chamber, perhaps at exactly the wrong time. But he also didn't really want an evolution chamber there, so he might have had to have canceled it. Sunken needs to turn into an actual, Creep needs to turn into a Sunken. Gonna take a little while. It's pretty quick, actually. And this is one of the solid ways to defend against an overwhelming number of StarCraft 2 Zerg units. A lot of Sunkens. It's actually, I guess, at the end of the day, a very similar story to a StarCraft 2 ZVZ, in which one player is trying desperately to get to mutas. Something that doesn't really happen in today's meta, by the way. But, we've seen that happen before. The 2-base Zerg trying to get to mutas, depending on spines and maybe some trickery on the scouting to get there, and then the other guy trying to figure out if it actually is mutas or a Nidus Worm or something, and trying to kill him before that happens, or successfully defend the muta game. It's just that with Brood War Zerg, that's basically the only game you can play. Or at least I thought that would be the only game you could play. They actually have Threepoint not going for a Spire at all. Hydralisk Den. Lair's not done, obviously, so if a Spire is going to come down, it wouldn't be now anyway. And this Ling from Shin probably really intent on figuring that out. It would be in Threepoint's best interest not to reveal it, though, for sure. So, at the very least, Shin could delay a Spire if that is ultimately the plan. It could be Lurkers, though. I mean, the Hydralisk Den is here. A Lurker Den could come, and you know, they're good without their upgrades, but they're not... I don't know if they're that good. I don't know. Such an interesting game when it comes to Brood War versus StarCraft 2. Hydras are out, spitting down an Overlord that Shin did not move. Shin actually has expanded over to that gold base, which will then open up the backside as well. Don't forget that. The backside's still not opened up for Threepoint, though, so he'd be able to take over the bottom half of the map, but he wouldn't be able to harass quite yet. It is still safer to take the backside of the map until your opponent also can get the backside of the map. But we'll get there when we get there. Third hatch now coming down as an actual mining hatchery for Threepoint, who was trying to get maybe type of engagement. Just pureling Hydra on that potential. Now adding on some Lurkers. I think the problem I have with Lurkers is that you still can't get that many of them in this scenario. And any that you get actually have a fairly powerful response that does not exist in Brood War, which is the Ravager. It shouldn't be the end-all be-all response, because Lurkers should be able to remaneuver and whatnot, but it is a time-buying maneuver that doesn't exist in Brood War. In StarCraft 2, at the very least, you could either, try and actually get the kills on Lurkers with Corrosive Bile, or you could try and buy time. What you're buying time for? Possibly just more roaches, honestly. Because roaches are so tanky and so affordable. Just having a good mass of them would probably work in a concave. Not a choke. Oh, we're about to find out. No Ravagers, by the way, so no time buying. And this isn't just the Lurkers. This is Lings as well. Lurkers do burrow on up here. Shin going to have as much of a concave as possible in this position. He also did have +1 attack finish, which I don't know if that changed the kill shot on the Lings. Did it? 35 health on them. Someone can tell me. But the point is, the Roach Queen seems to have done the trick. Yeah, it just can't get enough of them. Compared to the number of roaches, it's very similar to the much earlier dynamic of Ling versus Roach, actually. In that, if you go Roaches too quickly in StarCraft 2, you can't build enough of them. So the Lings actually get a surround, and they're very effective. Also, they can happen before they have +1 melee, or missile, right? So you need to have a certain number of economy before you can really get into Roaches. And this kind of feels like the same thing, where it's like, Lurkers probably eventually are the better idea, but early on, getting enough of them is not going to work out, and we do see that Shin is winning this game, 100%. Spire is on the way, which there's nothing that shoots up now for Shin except those queens, but it might be too late. Is the Brood War Lurker not cloaked? It absolutely does require a scan to reveal. Shin just actually had Overseers, right? I mean, I actually didn't notice because the Lurkers were dying, so I didn't even think about it, but it's because he actually had Overseers available. But yeah, they absolutely are cloaked. You definitely need to scan to kill them. If they weren't, hold position wouldn't be very good, would it? Mutas are on the way. Mutas and Lings could maybe clean this up, but not before the third hatch actually dies. And then you do have a stronger... I assume it's stronger. I'm actually not sure about this, but I assume that Spores are stronger than their Brood War equivalent, because they had buffs versus Mutas over the development of StarCraft 2. Well, versus biological, but obviously versus Muta was the goal. If they're better or worse doesn't really matter. The point is they will have Spores. The Spores will be here. And then they have Queens, which not only provide a little extra anti-air, but they also have transfuses. Now, that is a lot of Mutas. Perhaps Shin underestimating the counts a little bit. 13's not enough to really tackle 2 spores and potential queens and potential whatever else is coming out right now because Threepoint doesn't actually have a lot of information. He knows that the roaches were the only thing available when he was under attack. But that doesn't mean that Shin wasn't already on his way to Hydras. He actually wasn't that fast to Hydras, but I believe I did see the Hydraless Den. It is now done. We could start building Hydras. And eventually we will need to. But right now, Spore Queen does the trick while you build up your economy to afford as many Hydras as you would like. Now, only are the spores good or bad, whatever, they're available. StarCraft 2 also has a couple other things that are really good against mutas. Namely, Infestors and Vipers, which actually the Infestors kind of got a buff versus fast muta builds. Not that it's really mattering in the meta right now, but that was like one of the possible intentions of the patch we had. So this looks chaotic. This looks like Threepoint might be able to bring his way back, but it is a temporary ray of hope. Some guy with really broad shoulders is about to stand in front of the window and totally block all the sun coming in. Sorry. That just seems to be what's going to happen. I guess the most important thing about the defending player when it comes to Zerg versus Muta is that they have a solid foundation, I would say. You know, they don't get overrun, they don't lose a 4th hatch they're trying to build, and they don't have creep spread over there to build the spore crawlers. That means they're on 3 base forever, and then it gets weird, and that's not happening. We've had Shin in a fairly comfortable scenario, but maybe not as comfortable as one would expect, considering what looked like a dominating early game with the hatchery snipe. And now we got another thing that doesn't exist in Brood War, although thankfully we do have... Oh yeah, because overloads of detectors. That took me 10 seconds for my brain to catch up. We do have burrowed... That's so funny. Okay, so tunneling claws is totally a StarCraft 2 thing, but Brood War does have a better capacity of invisible scouting. You know, they just have to have an overlord, not an overseer, or any upgrade. It's just an overlord. So that's... Tunneling claws actually maybe isn't that great versus Brood War Zerg. But, you know, for what they don't get in a surprise factor, they still get in kind of a distraction factor. And they still also take a long time to kill because they're chonky in their regeneration. So it is still very annoying. And the overlords might not have had speed to begin with, but they might know it now. It's actually getting very difficult to remember which one is which as far as the production tab, because it's a map that's left-right, not up-down. So I've been having some troubles. I've been seeing, like, lurkers build and then having to triple-check myself that it's, in fact, the Brood War lurkers. And that Shin hasn't gotten to them somehow. Which he might! Yeah, there you go. Now I'm going to be super confused. Also, that's a sick skin. Why do I feel like I haven't seen that skin? Okay, anyway. 3 hatch, 4 3-point, 4 hatch for Shin, now saturated. Look how much bigger the StarCraft 2 lurker is compared to the little wee babby Brood War lurker. The wee babby. Especially when they're burrowed. They just look so small. Final roach, eventually going to be taken down. 1-1 across both players' ground units. I don't think the air units of the Brood War player ever got anything. They did not. And the further roach tunneling claws. Harassment is also going to be taken down. But this is, again, all just like a front, you know, just to make sure that Shin has a good foundation to get maxed out by the looks of things with a superior army. And I am going to say it's superior. I don't know exactly how powerful the Brood War army is going to look. For instance, if I was at the same exact supply, I have no idea. The races are entirely different as far as their supply explanation. I don't know how to put it. Brood War Zerg can be at a lower supply and be really, really good. StarCraft 2 Zerg almost always has to be at a higher supply than its opponent to be really good. So however you can sum that up. So I actually don't know what exactly the position is. But if this stuck with the kind of Brood War idea, then Threepoint is doing fine, being down 20 supply. If this is more like StarCraft 2 favored, then Shin being up 20 supply is more favorable. You know what I mean? We got 6 queens on the way from Threepoint. That is interesting. So what are the queens looking to do? Parasite to give some vision. They can't Broodling anything, can they? Wait, no, can they? Wait, what is the Broodling? Broodling is mech and... It's ground bio too, isn't it? Okay, we're gonna see if that's actually possible, because the lurkers are here. Nidus Worm is on the way. Spawn Broodling does kill anything. Okay, that's what I thought. I remember double checking this last time. So he's gonna try and Broodling the lurker? Is that working? Is it happening? It's not even happening right now. There's no Overlord. There we go. Overlords are available. Did not have the queen? Did they have the... Oh, they don't have the upgrade! Oh! Oh, no! Oh, my God. I didn't even notice that he was going after the queen nest. Oh, my God. Oh, that is such a bummer. I wanted to see that in action. Aw, man. And these queens are so useless now. Like, what else are they going to do? That is a Spore Crawler from the StarCraft 2 Zerg helping out against the Mutas. Oh my god, that Nidus Worm was actually really important because the Queen answer was a really good idea. Just to spawn Broodling all the lurkers. That could have been very powerful, but we'll never know. No. GG's. That game actually was a lot closer than I thought it would be. It is very difficult reading a game of a mirror matchup where the races are also just so different. I think Zerg is the most different across the two games. Protoss next the most different, and then Terran is actually kind of similar. Although Brood War plays mech more often, it's still like it's you know they exist in StarCraft 2 as well. But it's so difficult to tell what's really happening. But with a 20 supply difference at that moment, I think that was a totally okay game for both players. And if the Queens had worked out, that would have been really good. I don't know, like game ender or anything like that, but it would have been really good. Oh well, maybe we'll see it in game 3. Let's find out. All right, top left of potentially the final game of this finals. It is Shin. And in the bottom right, we have Threepoint, who probably had a very good idea. Probably had a very good strategy. And then was drop-kicked at the finish line. He didn't trip as so much as Shin just came out of nowhere with a flying sidekick that just completely obliterated him. But whether the Nidus Worm killed that particular upgrade or not, it was already a good maneuver from Shin. I mean, the game would have continued on if that upgrade hadn't been denied, I suspect. But it was already a good maneuver from Shin. Shin had also gotten faster to Vipers. He just hadn't actually used them until the very last second, which also should have started to impact that game quite a bit. Not only with the Parasitic Bomb that we saw used at the very, very end there to kill the Queens, and then the Mutas, of course, as well, but also the Blinding Cloud spell, I'm sure, had a lot of uses in the game like that, too. Abducts, ditto. And then Infestors also could have made an appearance. All good things. Obviously, 3-point, you know, he got to Queens, kind of the Viper equivalent, the air spellcaster. He also could have gotten to the ground spellcaster, the Devourer, as well, but we did not see that on the way. So, as far as what happens when Brood War Zerg with all of the tools looks like, Defiler, sorry, versus what the StarCraft 2 maxed out army with all the tools looks like, I have no idea. But I feel like I kind of lean closer to StarCraft 2 in general with this mod, not because Brood War's stupid and I hate it. No, not at all. But rather because Brood War's gameplay was and is still so impacted by the game mechanics. Yeah. So, you know, in some ways, having unlimited control groups would sound really good for Brood War, because then suddenly there's no 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A that requires your attention to actually move your freaking army across the map. But in other ways, I feel like means that it just, like, StarCraft 2 has the benefit of its own engine, right? It's like a home turf advantage. But that's why it's so interesting to watch this unfold. We've already gotten kind of some of the basics of the meta of this mod covered. We've got a consistently active development crew that actually tries to balance this thing, which sounds like the hardest job in the world. So we're going to see more and more revealed. And that's what's really fun about it and what's really fun about anything new, right? Which is why StarCraft 2 would love something new. Just for the fun of it. Just for being like, oh, that's how that works. And that's how that works. And that's how that works. But yeah. Didn't get to Defilers. Devourers, I don't think actually will make an appearance. Just because I brought them up just to emphasize. I don't think they would. But hey, maybe. Because I don't think that Threepoint, for instance, now, as he is the StarCraft 2 player once again, would ever try and actually go into a muta battle versus the BW Zerg player. It doesn't really seem like that's what you want to do. What you might want to try and do is perhaps what he is doing, which is to try and push a Ling Baneling angle. But like I was saying in the earlier games, it looks like the Brood War Zerg of this mod have really figured out how to handle early game Ling Baneling all-ins, and it's basically wall plus Sunkens into buying time for the Spire. So it actually looks like Threepoint, very much a typical macro-based play, Baneling Nest for safety into more drones. He will then have to deal with the mutas. This is just a fact. This is just something that's going to happen. You know, he did try and change things up in the last game by going for Hydras, but Shin's going to go with the old standard. Something that Threepoint's Overlord can freely see. I think he just knows it's not even worth scouting. I know what you're doing. Of course, he sees all the gases and whatnot. And he will go ahead and confirm. But then what do you do against this? Again, it's kind of similar to StarCraft 2's EVZ. If someone is going to get away with a Spire, then your options are just to basically defend. You can try and kill them before they get to a Spire in a lot of scenarios, but not this one. So then you defend. And it's all about trying to gain that foundation, which Shin was allowed to get to in the last game. Can Threepoint get to a solid foundation? Oh, you know, it'd be really a good idea. See the Queen's Nest, guys. This is the Infestation Pit, but it's Queen's Nest. I wonder if he could go Guardians. I'm a big fan of the Guardian morph in an angle where the player can't deal with it or even scout it. But that's jumping ahead. First of all, the mutas. So, like a StarCraft 2's EVZ, the defender Threepoint is going to have to determine how many mutas, how many lings, is there a transition happening behind this, and then where are the mutas coming in, where are the lings coming in. And the safest thing to do would be just to hole up on 3 bases, but then it gets into a weird territory where if you play 2 turtly and 2 defensive against a muta player, they can transition, they can out-expand you, and they can still win the game. I feel like it's probably going to be very similar versus Brood War Zerg. So the mutas show themselves, they get an Overlord, they're going to take map control, they're going to be a pain in the neck, but is that the end game of Shin? Is he just going to go mass muta? I'm not sure he will. Hive is on the way, and I'm feeling the Guardians, man. Feeling it. Get them. Get those little crabbies. Hydra Descent is on the way for Threepoint alongside the Infestation Pits, really just getting all of the materials needed to defend against the mutas. Some consideration also has to be given to the ground army, but the good news is Banelings are pretty good at the ground army defense. You don't have the possibility of a Roach tech transition from the Brood War player, so Lings only, basically. Maybe Hydras, but then your goal as the defender is also to get to Lurkers and Hydras, so if they are transitioning over into Lurkers, it's probably going to be a very similar, truly mirror matchup. But there we go. We got Hydra Descent on the way, yes, but we also have a Greater Spire. I'm feeling the Guardians. And with some Lurker backup, Guardians on the backside of these bases is going to be so freaking annoying. Plus the Lurkers on the front line. Shin, think he's got a plan. Threepoint might even know exactly what the plan is. Maybe picking up on what Shin is putting down despite such limited vision. Just because, you know, the number of mutas hasn't really increased very much. There's been no attempt on his life with a Ling muta attack. Kind of starts to give you the feeling that they might be transitioning. Or they might be building their economy. So Threepoint might already be figuring this out as well. But then, will he be truly prepared for everything? Does he think, oh my god, it's going to be a bunch of lurkers? Does he think, oh, it's going to be mass ultra? Which would look really funny. Tank versus StarCraft 2 Zerg, but still. Or is it going to be Guardians? And, well, actually, the answer is a big old Lynx around. SpaghettiOs, no Banelings available, apparently. They were in the wrong position. The Lings kill so many Queens, a good number of Hydras, and most of them will be able to escape. They had 0 upgrades. I could have sworn they would have had at least +1 Carapace or something there. But they did not. And there's the Guardians. 12 Guardians coming in on the right side, completely undetected. And there's also nothing that Threepoint can do about it until he gets those Vipers out. He doesn't want to play the Spire game with someone who has the ability to make Devourers and Scourge. So, while Vipers are in the air, they're still, you know, maybe their capacity to abduct and run away would still be better than anything else. Because the only other thing you can do against this is mass Hydra on the ground, which might take this on a mano-a-mano fight, but these things are just going to run away every time that happens. So actually, Threepoint is going to go for the Hail Mary all in, just say, fuck it, let's go. Let's try and force these Guardians back home, and then I can deal with them later. That might actually have some credit to it. I don't see any defensive lurkers here from Shin. He didn't get to them fast enough. He's losing a lot of technology and production. A lot of overloads going down as well, but he's not only killing bases with Guardians, which happens pretty quick, by the way. He's also doing it with those Lings. 6 Sunkens on the way somewhere, defending the base over on the 4th and the 3rd as well. And they're so fast to make, too, that unless Threepoint jumps on top of them, that will be like 12 Sunkens. Eventually, the Lurkers will deal with the Sunkens, but that's going to take so freaking long. At the same time, Threepoint's going to be losing every single building. He will lose to a straight-up base race. He would have, but he tapped up before then. GG's. Shin will 3-0 in the finals, showing dominance in the ZVZ matchup. Does kind of feel like it makes sense. I'm not going to say it's not fair. But it does make sense that the StarCraft 2 pro gamer, who also can kind of force more StarCraft 2 than Brood War, if he wanted to, or, you know, do what he did in this series, which was take that one map where Brood War was absolutely going to win and win that first, right? Like, it just feels like he has a lot going for him, and will probably be a mainstay competitor in this mod, unless you have another person who maybe was legitimately good at both StarCraft 2 and Brood War. Because, again, I don't know how good Shin was at Brood War, but you could have, like, TY join, and then maybe Shin would have some trouble. But we're not having that quite yet. So, Shin, going to dominate in this week's Open Cup, but I think the plan is to continue doing them on an every other week basis. So, make sure to check it out, guys. Thanks for watching.